our indigenous people in the past. I think there are efforts and there's a recognition that we need to do more. I also don't think we're not done with this discussion in the Nordic, or speaking for ourselves, for Norway either. But I think in maybe in somewhat the same way that there's an increasing recognition of the importance of indigenous people's way of life and the inherent value of it.
So apparently we're going to have Stig until the end. So I would like, he's checking with his team. I would like to invite Anne Norgam to join us actually on the stage. Please, Anne. Yay. Thank you so much. Just make a little seat for her.
Can we just...
Thank you, and you can just join us there. Francisco, please come here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And just could you please just introduce yourself quickly, and
Yes.
And thank you so much for joining.
Yes. My name is Anne Norgam, Niljasaslat, Kälkinjärv Niljasasla Anne. That was my name in the Sami language. And I come from the most northern village area of Finland, Sami, myself. And I work for the Sami Council, and also I'm the vice chair of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Peoples.
Fantastic. And I know that Anne would like to talk about fishery rights. And we are supposed to have a presentation. Thank you. Here we go.
Yes. I thought that since we have now heard about how important the indigenous people's food systems are for indigenous peoples, and then we have also heard that it's not so easy to practice our traditional livelihoods and so on. And in our case, when coming from Finland and being a fishing Sami, we had to go to the court in order to be able to fish. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about strategic litigation, how it's done in an easy, inexpensive way. And this is a case where to defend Sami rights as indigenous peoples. So for those who do not know, this slide is a Sami law in a nutshell, considering 3 countries. So Sami people are recognized in the Nordic constitutions in the different levels. In Sweden, the recognition is the best. Sami are recognized as a people. In Finland, as indigenous people, and in Norway as indigenous population. And then how we are recognized in the legislation is that there are some separate acts, like the acts on Sami parliaments, on Sami languages, and reindeer herding acts in Norway and Sweden. But usually Sami people are recognized among usual legislation. They have separate clauses, separate sections, not laws on themselves, on ourselves. So the sections on Sami rights are merged into usual law. And then we have the right to self-determination according to our constitutions, but in reality, in Finland we have cultural autonomy, in Norway right to self-government, and in Sweden there is both publicly elected parliament and state agency. And then when it comes to the land rights, and in Finland there is no recognition, we just have usufruct rights, and that is the case is all about. And in 2017, the Fishing Act in Finland changed, and that meant that I had to buy license to fish in my home river. The regulations changed so that earlier I could just buy a license and fish the whole fishing season and decide when, according to the weather, according to the level of the water and so on, when I wanted to go to fish. And of course the traditional knowledge was there because we know our rivers. And then suddenly the things change. We had to buy the same kind of licenses as tourists, compete with tourists, either 12 hours or 24 hours and to compete with the tourists. There were about 200 licenses, and they were sold in 2 minutes. So no local got their licenses, so we could not fish. Just tourists got to fish in our home river. So we were thinking what to do. And the cheapest way was to go to the court and break the law. So what we did, we took photos of ourselves fishing illegally. We told that we broke the law, but we didn't commit a crime because we practiced our culture, did what our forefathers had been teaching us. This was fished in a customary way. Then we turned ourselves to the police, told we are not paying the fines, and we go to the court. Court decided that we have right to fish because Sami people's right to culture is recognized in the constitution. So that was the court of first instance. And since this case, we had a beautiful media plan. We had lawyers, internationally recognized lawyers, developing our case and so on. And because this case was considered as precedent, important, changing the legislation in Finland. So the who accuses, what's it in English?
Prosecutor.
Yes, prosecutor asked us if we can bypass the second instance, go directly to the Supreme Court because this is a precedent. And so of course, we gave permission because it saved us about 10,000 euros. So we went to the Supreme Court. We broke the law in 2017, and the Supreme Court gave its judgment 2020. Now about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and decided they weighed two rights: the right to culture and the environmental right, and decided that the right to culture, because Sami are indigenous, we were released from all charges because we won in this case. And the most important issue was that because the river where we fished, it was not overfished, there was excess of fish, so we were able to practice our culture. We didn't, so we won in this Supreme Court case, And then the court weighed two rights: the right to the Sami people of their culture and duty to protect the environment. And now, what happens when we have won the case? The whole these proceedings, they cost us, four of us, about 10,000 euros. We got them back, so that was good. But then this has increased the hope of the Sami community for that social struggle and helps, and the litigation helps. And also, the most important is that because this contents of the judgment was not about procedural rights, about FPIC, but it was about substantive rights to culture. This judgment will change the legislation in Finland. According to the estimation of the Ministry of Environment, more than 30 different laws are going to be changed. But of course, we don't know when, but they will be done. So this is an easy way to change things. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much, Anne, for this actually very inspiring example of the fight of the Sami people in Finland. Let us remember that environmental defenders are killed every year. Last year only, there was this record of 227 persons killed for protecting their forest or their land. So it is encouraging to see this kind, of examples. But maybe Tanya, Francesco, or Nina, you would like to share some examples?
Not an example, but I just wanted to precise that the 30% of these land defenders are indigenous peoples, and we should fight this. And just citing some indigenous women of Mexico, they say indigenous peoples are actually the living alternatives to climate change. So if we are fighting climate change, we need to focus on people, but we need to ensure they have the rights to their territory. So really inspiring, Anne. We loved your example, and we need more examples and people like you showing that we can win this battle.
Nina.
Yeah, No, I think it's really important in these conversations and these spaces like Stockholm Plus 50 to talk about rights, to talk about the rights of Indigenous people, because if we want to preserve and protect forests and all kinds of land, we need to ensure that Indigenous people's rights and lands are protected first, because ultimately it depends upon, you know, the taking care of Indigenous people. But I feel we need to point out the fact that how is it possible that Indigenous peoples that have been living, you know, on our ancestral lands for generations need to go to court to have the right to do something that we have been doing for thousands of years? It shouldn't be like that.
And
It shouldn't be like that.
yes, really, it shouldn't be like that. And therefore, when we are designing all this legislation, all these international agreements, the Global 2020 framework, it is really important that there is rights-based approach so that Indigenous people's rights to their lands and territories are protected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about it from another perspective, and that is, it is my impression that we are at a time in which the fighters, those who learn how to struggle, how to fight, how to defend, are every day less and less and less, and there is not enough transmission of knowledge to the younger generations. And the younger generations, although they still keep the native last name, for instance, they are feeling every day apart from their own culture. And to me, the more important, the highest threat in this process is that the way of learning and constructing knowledge is being lost much more rapidly. And when we lose that ability, that's when we lose our identity as indigenous persons. So there has to be a struggle on how to keep and to improve our ways of learning and constructing knowledge, because that's the essence of what we are. Once we lose that, once that is lost, we can have the appearance, we can have the last name, but we no longer have the identity, the core that holds us as indigenous peoples. And this is also under threat because the educational system that is provided by governments doesn't take into account our own ways of learning, which have been proven very efficient throughout centuries. So that's another aspect of what we're discussing here. And given this scenario, and given the overwhelming dominance that we have from non-indigenous people, I think we once again have to be wise enough to find ways to overcome that situation. And I don't see that overcoming situation from an intracultural perspective, meaning from holding on to our own culture, only to our own culture, without being open in a multicultural society. That is too risky. So that's why I think about intercultural processes. Again, not meaning to lose our own identity, but to strengthen it. That's my thoughts on it.
Stig, any thought?
Comment?
This is a very rich conversation, but I think the issue of legal land rights and enforceable legal land rights is very much at the core of it, because in many of the worst situations, it starts with a crime. Yeah, people coming from the outside, breaking several laws. I mean, breaking the rights of indigenous peoples, but also breaking environmental laws, and the state not being able to uphold the law. So I think that's a very important area to focus on natural crimes and environmental crimes as well in this context.
Francisco, he took very important issue, and that is the issue of, because nowadays environmental rights and the identity of that I protect the nature, and then the standards, what is the protection of nature. And for example, now at my home river, the salmon stocks are decreasing, and the governments of Norway and Finland, they are banning the salmon fishing for the whole summer. So that we, in our society, that causes conflicts, because some want to be identified as protecting the nature, and therefore they say that you should not fish. And those who want to preserve the Sami culture, we say that we should fish because we have right to do that, as proven there. And then in order to practice our traditions, to give them from generations to generations, share our traditional knowledge, so that younger people now are weighing, should they be modern and protect nature, or should they be more traditional and follow the old ways of the Sami culture. And that's something that the governments of Norway and Finland, by telling the story, so that it is that we should also, the Sami people, we are responsible for protecting the nature, we should do that. But I refuse to take that. I refuse to speak about ethics and moral in this connection, because we are really protecting our indigenous culture.
Thank you so much, Anne. So now we are talking about like how to preserve our culture, how to actually do not have this dichotomy between defending and protecting nature, but also keeping and strengthening our cultural heritage. And I would like to illustrate this with an example that Anders will share with us. And I would like to ask our team technicians to actually show you a great example of innovation based on traditional knowledge.
I'm standing here in Kautokeino with a model of the food lab, and the food lab almost finished in the background. This is a genius tool of portraying and communicating the values and the food culture of the nomadic people of the Arctic. This can be a portable pop-up communication platform. It can be put up in Times Square or outside Harpan in Reykjavik.
The Food Lab project is about creating a platform to support pan-Arctic indigenous youth to bring their own traditional food knowledge and resources onto the global culinary stage and into the light. This is Indigenous Youth Action for Sustainable Development.
As you can see, a fully equipped Bocuse d'Or quality kitchen. This will be filled with broadcasting equipment so that the Food Lab can transmit on social media or live on TV channels from wherever it is placed. It is a nomadic communication vehicle, and it can be in the wilderness, it can be in Hantimansisk, Jamal, Reykjavik, Kautokeino, or somewhere out in the open plains of the Arctic.
I think this needs some, no? Thank you, Anders. Please just introduce quickly yourself and tell us more about this beautiful initiative.
Joo, Päivi Vuokaida. Olen Oskal Unihante Engelmaniante. So my Western name is Anders Oskal. And if we could put the presentation on, please. I work with World Reindeer Herders, which is an indigenous organization for all 24 different indigenous peoples that follow the reindeer as our way of life and civilization. And I will tell you a little bit more about this food lab of ours. But I want to thank all the panelists for a wonderful wonderful discussion. Don't you think they deserve an applause? And you know, there are so many things that I would like to continue discussing. And I have a proposition for you, that we continue this discussion around the fire, around the fireplace. I will come back to that. I have been reflecting on what was said, and I will not spend so much time on it, but I think we should be mindful and try to join all the voices of indigenous peoples, intercultural approach, you say, because when we talk about food and food systems, we must also realize that the forces in opposition to our ideas, our traditions, our way of life since time immemorial are big, are powerful, are influential. And I would just like to note that civil society and indigenous peoples mechanism for the UN Committee on Food Security have been more than critical to the UN Food System Summit for those reasons. And I think it is good that we continue these discussions and continue to elaborate and understand and choose wise approaches, as we heard from our Sami colleagues here. Well, without further ado, I would just say that our work on food is tightly connected to resilience. And the best investment we can make, we think, as reindeer herders for our future is to invest in our youth. And what I show you here is a book. Ällu means herd, a reindeer herd. This was a report to the Arctic Council ministerial meeting, which is not so important, but there are 14 chapters in this book from 14 different indigenous peoples. We will try just a few of those dishes tonight. This book won the prize as the world's best food book in 2018 in competition with, let's see, 1,273 books from 116 nations.
Bravo.
And thank you very much. That applause was for our youth, because they're the ones who made this book. It's their work. It's a wonderful recognition that for them to take pride and, you know, put their chin up a little bit more and feel pride about their own culture, their own food systems, traditional indigenous knowledge that can be, as is proven, best in the world. Well, from this work, we were thinking that we need something more, a platform for indigenous youth, so that the youth, together with elders and chefs and so, could work really to bring forth their own food culture and also revitalize it where it's maybe become weaker over years. And so I think tonight we are very thrilled. Our team is very thrilled to invite you all, everyone, to a special food reception with some food tastings, nice food from the Arctic food systems of indigenous peoples, the reindeer herders and other indigenous peoples. And we plan to do that to bring you into our food lab. Some of you may have seen it just between here and the train station. It's set up in a nice garden, thanks to Siham and her team. We are very grateful for that. It looks like this. You will soon see more of it. And we call it the Arctic Indigenous Peoples Food Innovation Food Lab. But, you know, you have to have some branding. So we thought of this, and I would like to test this slogan on you, if I may.
Okay.
So, boasho, that's the Sami word for the kitchen in a traditional tent, okay? So boasho is the name, but what do you think of this? Probably the coolest kitchen in the world.
Okay.
Nice.
You like it?
I love it.
Yeah. And I'm very proud to say that this is the first time that we really tested full scale. So thank you, Siham, for the wonderful opportunity to do so. And how do we get there? Well, we go out the main entry, and we just go by the road. We go up to the right. You have to walk a little bit on the bicycle lane, not the pedestrian lane, and then take a left, and you cannot miss it.
Not miss it.
Yeah.
Yay.
So, and So, you know, with that, I would just say, heartily welcome to all of you. Let's enjoy and let's continue the discussion around the fire. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
I love it.
Well, that was an amazing, amazing moment. Let us, remember, this moment. And please do get in touch with us if you have like more questions. It is always such a pity not to have more exchange, with like the audience. But please do not hesitate to contact me. My name is Siham Drissi from the Biodiversity and Land branch in UNEP. And let us also remember the importance of indigenous women, the importance of indigenous and traditional knowledge for agriculture and food systems. Let us also remember that some donors are actually really supporting indigenous peoples. So we need to do more, of course, always. But thank you so much for being with us today and for this great time we had. Thank you so much for
you.
all this
Thank
knowledge
you.
that you shared with us.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
I love your food lab. It just makes me hungry.
Let's go.